I'm trying to write a novel.
Really?
Yeah. I started last July. I wanted to try the easiest thing that could come to me, which is a romance novel.
Okay.
It is not easy at all.
Yeah, why did you think that was the easiest thing?
I don't know. Just because so I have this secret kind of vice where my sister and I were really into Hallmark movies. So that's why I thought, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, these scripts are pretty loose and kind of, what do you call it, formulaic. So I'm like, okay, well, a book is just kind of expanding on that.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could do that. But then, like, once I started thinking about like doing something original, that's where it kind of got tricky.
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh, wait, hold on, this is not as easy as I thought. And you have to write. I mean, because like, or at least in my mind's eye, you have to write like compelling characters.
Yeah.
You can't just. I mean, I could write a Hallmark script, okay, fine, but that's not really what I'm going for. Like, I want to go for something a little bit more, like, that has depth in it. And then once I got the idea of like putting myself in that story, then it got even more complex because I'm like, damn, like how much of myself do I really want to put in there?
Yeah.
And like how much do I want to expose? Like, what, like, the journey that the character is going to go through is the journeys that I've gone through or that I am going through currently. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know how to write that in a story that's compelling with another character in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of feel like in some ways all writing is like autobiographical. It's hard
That's
to
fair,
hard to
yeah.
not inject yourself in some ways anyway into the story or into the main character.
That's true.
But I also feel like that's kind of what makes it easier to write a compelling story, because if you're just like basically turning a character, making yourself into a character, you know yourself pretty well.
Right.
And like everybody's got a lot of, nuance and interesting character traits to them. So if you truly write yourself into a character, I feel like that character, it's hard not to make them compelling because you'll include all your individual quirks in there. And if anybody's anything like you at all in some way, then they could relate to that character. So
like the biggest thing the biggest hurdle that I'm coming upon is the fact that, so while I have an ex and I've had relationships, it's been 3 years since my last relationship. So I can't quite visualize and like what that would look like currently. And not to mention that my last relationship was long distance for the majority of the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to like write that character. It's like, okay, do I really want to write my ex into that? No, not really. And then like now that I know what my type is, it's like, okay, well, I don't really know how to incorporate our characters and our personalities together in a compelling story. So I'm kind of like, because I don't want to just write like some stereotypical woman in there without agency, without any sort of depth and whatever.
Yeah, the men writing women stereotype.
Yeah.
Yeah, it always turns out the same way.
Yeah. Although, like, interestingly, I've taken the approach of wanting to tell the romance story from the guy's perspective, which from all the Hallmark movies, it's all the lady's perspective. So I'm like, okay, well, what would the story look like if it were from a guy? And my sister was always telling me that, like, she reads a lot of Nicholas Sparks. Mm-hmm. So she tells me that that he writes from the guy's perspective, but that what he does is he romanticizes and kind of writes his male characters as kind of like the women's ideal.
Yeah.
So he writes for the woman ear, whereas I'm trying to do the opposite.
So your audience would be male.
Ideally, well, okay, so it would be women, but I'd like to write it from a guy's, like, from a different perspective. I don't know how to really show that or say that, but
right.
Just, I guess, show a little bit more of the guy's internal dialogue, whereas like your typical, or I'm assuming your typical Nicholas Sparks character is, buff and has daddy issues and whatever. I'm like, I'm not buff. I don't have daddy issues, and I'm not in my late 30s with a child or some really complex background or anything like that. So,
have you read a lot of romance novels?
No, I'm not really a reader. I used to be a reader, but I'm not really.
You're
a
writing a novel,
anymore.
But you're not a reader.
So I've had to get into it now.
Yeah.
So
because I feel like that's the first step of writing, is reading a lot.
Agreed.
So you have a lot of knowledge of what things are written like and what not to do. Like you might read a book, you're like, oh, I didn't like this part, so I'll make sure to avoid that in my writing. I feel like you can't, or it's a lot harder. I don't know if you can, but I won't say it that strongly. But it's a lot harder to just come up with ideas from nothing rather than having a source of inspiration to use. Like all these other books that you could take a little bit from here and there to make your own thing?
I guess I just like making things difficult on myself. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But I just wanted to like just to throw my hand at it, just to see what I could do. Like, what could Josue do? Gun to your head.
Yeah.
You got to do something. Okay, you got to do it.
That's pretty cool. Do you have the plot fleshed out in your mind? Like fully?
So yes and no. I've kind of varied between 3 different plots, or a variation, and it's kind of autobiographical in a sense. So like I'll kind of tell you a little bit of a blurb here. So the character's name is Harvey, which is me, and he's recently come into some money because his business is going well, and he's traveled a lot, and he finds himself in Sag Harbor, which is in Long Island, and he's renting a beach house for the last 2 weeks of the summer because work has gotten so bad that this is the only time he can actually get vacation, because from now on it's just balls to the walls type effort.
Okay.
But he doesn't know how to vacation like that, so because he's just been so focused on work and whatnot. So he's trying to learn how to vacation, and then that's where female character comes in. That's kind of the journey that I want Harvey to take, like how to relax, how to incorporate somebody else into his life versus just soloing it. Does that make sense?
Okay. So what is this female character, like the free spirit that like is the opposite of him in a way? Like she's relaxed.
The inverse, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, not necessarily the opposite, because like I mean, again, I'm Harvey in this sense. So
Yeah.
like I would want. Again, this is the ideal girl for me. So this is my book. Like she would be like, and I know myself. Like how there are some girls who are just like, I guess you would say free spirited, but like just like a little. I mean, not dim, but what's the word I'm looking for here? It's just like
I don't know.
Not. It's kind of just like it's like a little spacey. Like I don't know. Does that make sense?
Okay, you're looking for spacey girls. Yeah.
That's and like the reason I think like that, I guess, or for this book is because I know myself to be a little too rigid sometimes. So I need a little bit of wonder, like somebody to bring wonder and imagination into my life, to where I don't really have that. To where I like if I tend to be more towards the structured, just do what needs to be done, get it done. But then I don't really enjoy. Like I said, I don't really know how to enjoy. I don't know how to vacation. Like if you were to put me on a beach, I'd sit there and write. I'd take pictures. I don't know how to do anything else. So I need I feel like I need somebody to kind of just help me wander through life, through the things that don't involve work or that I can't monetize. Does that make sense?
No, I get that. I fall into that trap a lot too, of wanting all of my waking hours to be productive in some way. And I am capable of also relaxing, like sitting down and playing some video games or whatever. But usually it's like I have a checklist of things that I want to get done in a day before I can then decide, okay, now it's just relaxation time.
How do you think having Adrian in your life has helped you with that?
I suppose it has helped in some ways, because often, she's like, we need to go like do things, like have fun.
Yeah.
Like let's go like on a hike like we did on a few days ago. I probably wouldn't have done that on my own. Like without her, I probably would have been, but I guess like hiking for the sake of like the exercise, I probably would have.
Yeah. That's exactly how I think.
I do like hiking. I feel like I don't make the time for it. What I want to make the time for is like right now, like making a podcast, or like, writing something, or like, working on some sort of goal, like I guess too goal oriented rather than just, enjoying it for, the enjoyment's sake.
For its own sake. Yeah. I don't really know how to do that.
And that even applies to like when I am relaxing, like if I'm sitting, like after like I've done my set of things that I want to do in a day, and now I'm just playing video games. My playing video games is very goal oriented. The reason I enjoy the video games is because I feel like I'm making progress towards goals within the game.
Yeah. Oh my god.
So it's just all everywhere really for me.
Yeah. No, see, I'm like I realize within myself that I need to step out of that and to get new experiences and to do something. So I'm like, okay, I have to force myself to do that. So one of the things I've done is I've traveled a lot. So I've been traveling since 2019 since like summer of 2019. And I've only stopped as of 3 days ago. So I was just in DC, and I came back from Tennessee on Friday. So 3, 4, 5 days ago, something like that.
Yeah.
But I told myself I needed a break. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this summer and I'm just going to do what normal people do and just chill.
Nice. Welcome to the Regular People Podcast. I'm Wade Allen, and today I'm joined by Josue Peralta.
What's going on, Wade?
We just were talking about traveling and writing a book and stuff, so we've got a little bit of a baseline, I guess. But for really any guests, when it's their first time on my podcast, what I like to do is ask you, so the audience can like know you a little bit. What have you been up to in your life for the past 5 years? You don't have to give an in-depth background, but just like, you know, what have your interests been? What have you been working on in life, and you know, things like that. How have you changed over that time, if at all? What have you been doing?
Yeah, so for the last 5 years, I started a business in 2017. I started a marketing / web design firm.
Oh yeah.
And I was broke as hell for a couple of years while I grew that. So that was really frustrating, and I didn't know if I would make it, to be honest with you. And then it wasn't until COVID hit that kind of got a stroke of luck.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but unfortunately for me, I guess, where I struck gold. So that was pretty nice. I now kind of specialize in service the architecture industry, which is really cool. Yeah,
cool.
It's something unexpected and fruitful, which is really nice. But when I kind of got that money, I'm not really one to spend a lot or to, you know, I'm not a spendthrift, but I decided, or I kind of told myself, I will never have this kind of money again. I'm going to travel and put it into experiences.
Yeah.
So I just kind of left, and I traveled every single month with like maybe 1 or 2 exceptions. And I visited almost the entire United States, for the exception of, I'm only missing 3 states now.
Which ones?
For the exception of Hawaii, Idaho, and Wyoming. That's
Got
it.
Alaska though.
I got Alaska. I was just in Alaska in March
Okay.
of
Cool.
this year, actually. Yeah.
So is this then? I'm guessing traveling while doing business still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of realized that I could do both, and I realized that like when I was home, I was pretty bored because there was nothing like stimulating here for me. So I just kind of left and kept going and didn't really stop.
So what does your travel look like? Like when you go to a different city or state, like are you trying to like see as much of that area as possible? Like are you going out? Like what are you actually doing out there? Are you doing a lot of like business meetings or anything like that? Or are you just like taking photos? Like are you staying in nice hotels? Like what do you exactly doing?
So I like to marry business and pleasure as much as I can. I don't know why, it's just a thing I do. When I travel, I usually like to muster up business. So the majority, actually, well, that's not true. My biggest clientele isn't even in Wisconsin. I have clients in Washington. I have clients in Texas, in Tennessee. Those are my like biggest ones, I would say. But when I do travel, I like to travel kind of slow but fast at the same time. So slow in the sense that like I would go out west. Like let's say I wanted to go to California. That's a 3-weeker. So I don't come back for like a month or something like that. So whenever I'm out there, I usually just stay at an Airbnb. I work in the mornings, and then I work in the afternoon / night, or I flip it around however I kind of want to. So one thing I picked up was I really wanted to take pictures of capitals. So I've been taking pictures of capitals across the country, which is fun. Seeing which ones are the most awe-inspiring and most beautiful, and which ones are kind of depressing. West Virginia, I'm talking to you. And then, surprisingly, Iowa is the most ornate. Like, you would not guess Iowa, but its entire dome, it's plated in real gold. Can you believe that? The entire dome. The exterior.
The exterior of it?
Yes.
How often do they have to, like, clean that to keep it shiny?
I don't know, but when we were there, it was getting cleaned, and they said that it cost them, like, an arm and a leg to do so every time.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what the tour guy said, so that was pretty interesting. But, yeah, so I say in, like, Airbnbs, I sometimes rent out like the whole house if I really wanted some space to sprawl out or whatever, or just kind of a room if I really like in California, for example, where it's like super duper expensive. So and then because I'm driving most of the time, I don't always drive. I sometimes fly, like Alaska or where else have I flown? Florida and kind of the south part. But because I mostly drive, it's really economical that way. So
You must have a nice car then if you're going to
yeah,
hundreds of thousands of miles.
can you
on it.
guess how many miles my car has?
I'm going to say 450,000.
We're at 325.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I bought it with 40,000 in 2016. So I've had it for I don't know, whatever that is, 7 years
Put on nearly 300,000 miles onto it.
by myself.
Yeah. That is like me. The opposite of me. I bought my car that I no longer have as of recently, but I bought it in 2000. I think it might have been 16 also. Maybe it was 2015.
What did you get?
PT Cruiser. And I had it up until just a few months ago. So I also had it for like 7 years or whatever. And I put on 10,000 miles.
That's a month for me.
Actually, might have been like 12, something like that. But I drove it so little. I like literally just to work and back.
Are you
like,
just not a traveler, or?
well, when we travel, we always like fly because
That's true.
we've been and also I didn't trust my car to last on any sort of road trip. So like when we would drive places, we would take Adrian's car.
Yeah, that'll work. It's been a lot of fun. Like once I was kind of halfway through, I figured I might as well just go through all 50, and then I kind of made that goal, and I wanted to finish it by all 50. And in December, I sat down and I planned out the entire year, and I was supposed to leave June 1st, so tomorrow, to out west for like a 6-weeker, and I was supposed to finish the Wyoming and Idaho portions. And then I have some friends in California I wanted to see, and though I have gone to Washington, I haven't really spent time there. It's like I wanted to spend a week in Washington and a week in Oregon, which is kind of the nice part about that slow travel. Although it's fast, like on a daily basis, like I see a lot of things per day,
Right.
but I just see a ton.
That's cool.
While I'm
probably
there.
the way to do it. Yeah, to spend long periods of time.
Yeah. So the reason that is I kind of took to heart the what do you call it? The saying that, if you want to go fast, go together, but if you want to go, but if you go slow or alone, go fast or something like that. It escapes me right now,
Sure.
but that's sounded terrible, but yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. So I mean, since I've been traveling alone, I just kind of went as fast as I could for as long as I could, and then I recently just gassed out.
That is, that's all right. You just spend like an actual summer of relaxation for the first time.
Okay, so here's what relaxation means to me, which apparently does not mean relaxation to my family. Okay, so I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying within state borders. Okay, whatever. I want to continue writing my book. That's pretty chill. I want to learn to sail better. So I'm taking sailing classes.
That's cool.
In July. My sister's like, that's not really, relaxing. I'm like, yes, it is. Come on, what are you talking about?
No, I think that's relaxing.
Yeah, I think that counts. And then I start my master's, as you know.
Yeah.
What else do I want to do? Oh, I want to start really seeing a lot of content. So that's the thing that a lot of people don't really realize is that, like, if you were to go on my Instagram right now, I have maybe 100 posts. But if you were to look at my Lightroom, I have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures that I haven't edited, because when I travel, or I travel so fast per day and for so long that I just had that my backlog is just insane.
Yeah.
Of pictures, and it takes time to edit. But if I'm traveling, I can't really edit while I travel. And then if I keep traveling,
would you trust an editor to do it for you? Like, would you want to do that? Like, have a photo?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. I just haven't gotten around to
Yeah.
putting into work of finding one, making sure they're good, paying them, getting it to them, making sure it's just the headache that I don't want to put in.
I get that.
And by the time I do that, I'm like, okay, well, I might as well just do it myself if I'm putting in the work.
I don't know. I'm probably going to save you a lot of time if you really want to get them all edited.
That's true.
Probably save you a lot of time to
No,
hire
yeah, that's
somebody
true.
to do it. But.
And the thing is, it's not even just pictures. Like I decided to document via video.
Oh yeah.
So I have a full 4 terabyte thing full, and then I have like another one. I have like another 2 terabytes of footage that barely anyone has seen, and that it sits there unedited because I haven't had the time or haven't put in the time, I should say, to have anybody edit it or even look at it.
Yeah.
Although I know it's pretty good, but I mean, it's not as interesting as these vloggers or what have you, but it's my life, so I'm a fan.
Do you like, is it you in it, or is it just like your surroundings, like nature and like
no, I narrate.
architectural shots? You narrate. Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. I like to talk a lot, so I mean, it kind of became my what do you call it? companion,
Oh, yeah.
like while I traveled,
Okay.
because it is fairly lonely.
So it's
I
like
will
video
say that.
journals, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It is incredibly lonely. Like, could you imagine like being in the Grand Canyon all by yourself?
Yeah, I actually I have not done any solo traveling in so long now. It's kind of I've been wanting to do it again because there's something great about traveling with other people. There's also something differently great about traveling by yourself, like you were kind of talking about a few minutes ago. It's like being able to go at your own pace and spend as much or as little time as you want doing whatever, rather than having to sync up with somebody else's schedule. It's just so freeing.
So like I'm a people guy, and when I first left in 2020 for like an elongated trip, it was supposed to be 6 weeks. I didn't want to go alone, and I was like, oh man, I don't know what to do. Like how am I supposed to kind of like I didn't really want to experience the amazing West that everybody talked about that I'd never been to, and be alone to like see all these stuff, and then so what I did, I kid you not, I paid somebody a salary and the expenses to come and travel with me.
Wow.
Kid you not.
What a great job for them.
Hell yeah. But he, and it was a friend of mine, and he's a good guy, but it turns out that he's not a good traveling companion.
That was his one job.
That's literally it. And I think I told him to organize the footage too, just like as an actual like weight off my shoulders.
Yeah.
And he didn't really do that well either, which is disappointing. So we were like, I'll give you an example. Like we were in the what do you call it? Mount Rushmore. I was like, this is pretty nice. Like, what do you think? Oh, it's all right. Silence. I'm like, okay, this is not it. And then we went to Crazy Horse there too.
Oh yeah, and the Crazy Horse.
Nothing, bro. And I'm like, nah, this cannot be happening. And then like we were about to head over to Yellowstone and spend some time in Wyoming, and right on the border, and I'm like, okay, I can't keep doing this, because even on the rides to there, he would be like listening to his audiobooks, which are like fantasy whatever that I'm not really interested in. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of alone but not alone.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not really working. So he was not providing any companionship but robbing me of the solitude. So what's up?
Wow.
So
Yeah,
I actually decided to like I finished paying him whatever I was going to pay him, and then I just drove him home. So I actually turned around, and then I just took him home, and then I left again by myself.
Wow.
So, but yeah, I love traveling, and I mean, it's been what do you call it? A particularly revealing experience, in the sense that like you really get to see what you're made of, and self-reliance.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess you get to meet new people, but like mostly kind of tap into really deep, like, what are you really made of? Because you're out here for 6 weeks by yourself, big bro. Like, it's not particularly, ideal. And not to mention, I'm not one to resort to social media for validation like that. I find it tacky and weird, to be honest. So like when I went on a huge trip, I didn't post on social media not once. And because I wanted to like really experience it, what it was like, and I came back completely different. I feel I was just, I would say more in tune with God and more in tune with like who I am and who I really wanted to be. If that makes sense. I don't know if that's weird to say, but
No, I get that. Coming back from a long solo trip and feeling like a different person afterwards, it's definitely happened to me. Like right after high school, I went to New Zealand by myself, and it was only like a month or two, but yeah, I was just like traveling the whole island, nobody else, and wasn't even old enough to be able to rent a car either, so that made it hard.
That's the worst. How did you do it?
Well, took a train that was actually way too expensive for a lot of it. Took
It was.
buses. They were a little bit better, but a few ferries. I don't know, just like public transportation, really. Actually, New Zealand is a pretty great country for traveling, because there's like these basically traveler kiosks that like have a distinctive, like they all have the same like logo, so you can find the building like, oh, that's the one you go to in this city. And like basically anything you want to do, like you need to find a bus, you need to like whatever, any sort of thing that you would like to do, you need to find some accommodation, you need maybe some activities that would be cool. You just go there and ask them what do I do, and then they just like give you a few options.
What year was this?
We graduated in 2013 from high school, so it was 2013. Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, I could not imagine myself back then doing something like that.
Yeah, I just had like this big backpack that honestly, like, I didn't know anything about traveling going into that trip. So I just like got what I thought would be good, and the backpack that I got was way too big than what I should have gotten. Now I've learned to pack smaller rather than like really just like bring less than you need,
Right.
and it'll make it easier on you if you're like hiking long distances with a backpack on. And I was just like wandering places and like staying in like hostels and stuff, and all that solitude. I don't know, it gives you a lot of time to think and like sort out your life and your thoughts and who you are.
Would you do it again?
Oh yeah, no, I've been wanting to. I've actually been wanting to like kind of repeat that trip. I've been wanting to go back to New Zealand because there's still so much I haven't seen in that country, and it's a beautiful country. And do a solo trip there again. I just haven't. The past 4 years, I don't know. I've been in school, and every time I've been traveling somewhere, it's been with Adrian, which is great. So it's kind of, I feel like almost mean like this time I'm just gonna go by myself.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. So like it's. I mean, that's another thing. Like traveling alone is much cheaper.
Yes.
than traveling with somebody else. So,
well, actually, in some ways, it's not. It actually depends on how you do it. Accommodation, if you're getting an Airbnb, you just split that with however many people you're with. That makes it cheaper. If you're, depending on the type of transportation, too. Like, if you're renting a car, cheaper if you're doing it with other people. You all split the cost. If it's, like, bus or train, then it's the same because you're just paying per seat. But there are ways you can make it cheaper. And it depends on, what country you're going to, too, as well. If, it's a drivable country or not.
So, like, you've traveled a lot abroad, right?
Oh,
so you mentioned New Zealand. You mentioned, I think you said Greenland or Iceland at one point.
I went to Iceland. Yeah, that was also a solo trip, and that was an interesting and difficult one in a different way because it was that I went there in winter, so I could see.
Well, you're supposed to go there in winter. Why would you go to Iceland in the summer?
Well, actually, the biggest tourist time for Iceland is August.
As it is in Alaska, but my point is, if you're going to go up north, you got to go when it's cold to see the northern lights.
Yeah, you can see the northern lights. That is why I went. But
yeah.
If you want to like be able to go on lots of cool like hikes and see waterfalls, there's tons of awesome waterfalls and like volcanoes in Iceland. You would want to go in the summer because I saw some waterfalls, but they were frozen. So it's like they still look cool, but like it's not the same. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So there's just so many amazing like nature place like naturalistic settings to see in Iceland that some of them are really cool in the winter, but I think most of them are better in the summer. So if your primary goal is northern lights like mine was, then yeah, February is the time to go.
Yeah, so in Alaska, early March, end of February is the time to go.
Yeah.
And that was, oh God, that's another stupid story for another time.
Yeah, that one, like I went with a tent because I was planning on not even doing hostels or Airbnbs. And so I just brought my tent and found like a really tiny campsite in Reykjavik, or like close by, the first night. And there was like a snowstorm, and it ripped holes in my tent and filled my tent up with snow. Like,
Wade
in my sleep.
Wade.
So I was like, well, I don't want to buy a new tent. I'm just gonna get rid of this trash tent, and I guess I'm gonna
hostel it up.
But I didn't hostel because I didn't have any money for that trip. I basically spent most of the money on the plane there.
Yeah.
And then like 2 years later, all of a sudden, Iceland plane tickets are like 1/3 now, forever, of what I paid. Like in like 2015 or 14 or whatever it was, it cost like 1,400 to get to Iceland.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I see Iceland flights all the time for like 500, 400. It's like
chump change.
I know. But anyway, so I did couchsurfing.org. So it's
dude, I am on couchsurfing.
Free Airbnbs.
Yes,
basically. Except you live with the person.
Yeah. So I did that once in Texas, actually. I had a good experience. I'm still friends with the guy from there. Yeah. That was really weird. But I had a really good time there, but I never tried it again. Or, I mean, I've never dared to try it again because, like there's just some comforts that I want now.
Yeah.
Like when I travel, like I want like my own space. I don't want anybody to like I just don't want to look at anybody sometimes when I'm working.
Yeah.
Because like when I work, like I get into these like these modes or in the zone where I'm just like working for 12 hours straight, and it's just like, what are you doing? It's like I'm working, leave me alone, type thing. So if it's not like on the kitchen table, it's like, nah, I can't really work with somebody there.
Yeah. So I just was curious about that. Like, so it's like graphic design.
Yeah. So it's a mixture of things. So my biggest thing is web design.
Web design.
Yeah. It's web design, and then my client have needed graphic design, so I'm not terrible at that either.
Yeah.
So I started providing that, and then at one point I was hiring photographers to do stuff, and I was like, I think I can do that. Yeah. So then I invested in camera, and then I started taking photos, and then that kind of morphed into also wedding photography and quinceañeras and stuff like that. So
It's like web design, like event photography,
yep.
and
And then after that, some clients needed video. So now I also do like video services, like professional, really good ones.
wow.
So I kind of do a whole lot of things. And then I also do like consulting on the side for other companies.
Like what
So
kind of consulting? Like what are you consulting about?
What should we do with our social media?
Oh.
Granted, I hate managing social media. Don't tell my clients that. Like I know how to do it, but I just don't like it.
Okay.
So I tell them what to do and
Yeah.
how to do it.
Right.
But I just don't actually do it for them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then all those things, and then also I presume, are you doing like when you're traveling anyway, like networking, like trying to gather up more clients?
Yes. Always.
So how do you do that though? Like
church actually. Yeah. So church, I just kind of tell people what I do and kind of do it that way. Or if I meet random people, like for example, like I met a photographer friend of mine who, he lives in Washington. I met him in I'm sorry, not Yosemite. I met him in what's it called? Yeah, no, it's the other one. Zion.
Zion.
I met him in Zion. Just a random dude walking with his wife, just taking pictures. I'm like, oh hi.
Wow.
So I kind of like to do it like that. I don't like to be too salesy about it.
Okay.
I kind of just like to gauge what people are doing, talk in conversation, and then like if I know something that they could do better, I just kind of tell them, hey, you can do this better.
Yeah.
Or like here's or how do you do it? Blah blah blah. And then if they don't know how to do it better, it's like, hey, if you need any help finding somebody to help do it for you, let me know. And then if I can't help somebody find doing it, it's like, well, I actually do it too. So
Yeah.
and then kind of goes like that.
That's been kind of unrealistic because I don't know how well it actually work. Dream of mine to do something similar, but with like a podcast. I'd like to just go to like some national park, or like a lot of them, just like kind of go on a solo traveling trip, just like hiking, Zion and all these other places, or like in New Zealand, there's a lot of places that are cool. Like the Rootburn Track is one that I've been planning on doing, just like a 7-day hike really, and just doing these hikes with bringing a little bit of audio equipment. And then if I meet people along the way and talk to them, ask them if they want to just have a conversation, and then do strangers out in nature recorded podcast episodes. Like
okay.
on a trail. I think that would be a cool idea, but then like how many people would even say yes? And like, I don't know. Would it even turn out well? Like, would the audio quality suck because it was outside? I don't know.
Would people care? It's strangers in nature. What do you expect? It's not supposed to sound like this.
That's true. There'd be like birds chirping and like wind and stuff.
Well, and you would want that because you're in nature.
Right.
Because otherwise it sounds wrong.
That's true. It would be part of the thing. Yeah.
No, yeah. But like, one of the things I learned, I should say, while I was traveling alone, is that a lot of times I was, or I felt a lot of peer pressure to kind of just do the best, be the best at everything I did and whatnot. And then I just kind of realized that like at one point everybody's just winging it, bro. Like I'm like, so like here's the thing. Like it sounds really weird, but I had to start school late, or by school I mean college late, because I didn't have any money. So we all graduated in 13, but I didn't start school till 17. So when everybody was graduating, that's when I started. But the thing is, the school I found, you can test out of classes. So like if you know the knowledge, you can kind of just test out of it. And in those 4 years, I kind of gained a lot of knowledge on whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So when I did my my BS in marketing management, I'm like, a lot of the classes are super easy. So like I started in December, and by summer I was done. So like I just tested a lot of classes that I didn't even study for. I was just like, okay, cool. And then I just kind of got, like 80, 90s, and I was like, I don't really care about anything else. So I finished in less than a year, and that's kind of impressive to me. I don't know, but like
that's a cool system that school has.
Yeah, so I finished like really fast, and then I started a business which sucked for 2 years. I made no money, and then it kind of boomed, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then it's like, this path is not traditional. It's not lauded. But like now that, like if I were to say, well, I have my own business, nowadays that's like, oh wow, you're super cool, you got that. But like back then, if you're an entrepreneur, you were just broke, bro.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Yeah, I mean, it's like everybody just kind of takes their own path and is winging it out there. And I know I definitely am. And like this cannot go without mentioning. It goes to show the importance of, again, getting rid of bad company. And I don't want to say bad company to kind of badmouth, but in the sense of like, ever since I left my ex-girlfriend, I swear to you, man, my life just kind of skyrocketed forward.
Wow.
That's kind of sad and
Yeah.
kind of
I mean, good for you, but also a little bit depressing.
but also a little bit depressing. Kind of how that works.
Yeah.
It kind of just skyrocketed, and it's still kind of in its upward trajectory. And I'd say that humbly because I don't want to, pride comes before the fall. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to fall any further. But yeah, I mean, as you know, I kind of come from a religious background. Did you know that, by the way, about me in Bethesda? Was that apparent? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I also came from a religious background too, so I don't think.
Did you really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, like my dad, my mom, my older brother, they're all very religious. And then,
what persuasion?
Two of my brothers decided not to be, along with myself. But so definitely some. I don't think we'd even call it like Protestant, like non-denominational Christian, but not Catholic. So I guess if you're just doing a broad divide between Catholic and Protestant, it'd be Protestant. But yeah, we went to a few churches. The one that we went to most was River Glen in Waukesha. And then
it's a huge church.
Yeah, I guess it was pretty. Okay, so River Glen, when I was a kid, going to church, like, I don't know, maybe like 9 and earlier.
Sure.
The church was actually in Waukesha West High School. Like, we would meet up in, I think it was like Mrs. Ortega's math class.
What?
And that's where we would have our church, and it would be like 30 people or something. And then like the congregation like grew, and we raised money to build the church, River Glen, and that was actually a pretty big church. It's like big amphitheater and stuff in there.
Yeah.
And then I would go there after that, and we would sometimes go to the other huge one, which I actually found out like a month ago is like in the top 100 mega churches in the country is Elmbrook.
Top 100?
It's in the top 100 mega churches
in Wisconsin.
No, in the country.
No, but that's my point. Like, what's he doing here in Wisconsin?
I don't know. And yeah, it's the top like 1 or maybe 2 or something in Wisconsin of biggest. It's like, I think to qualify as a mega church is something like more than like 4,000
members,
weekly attendees or something like that.
Yeah.
And Elmbrook has like 6,000 weekly or something like that.
And they also like once you start having campuses, then you.
Oh yeah, now Elmbrook has several locations too. Yeah, it's like this Elmbrook, south side Elmbrook. Yeah. So I didn't realize that, but I went there plenty of times too, and that, like, it was massive, and they had these huge amphitheaters, and it was always a cool place to like explore because there's just so many different rooms and layers, and like it felt like there's like secrets to find like in this building.
Yeah.
And I just never like pieced it together. This is a massive place, like unusually massive.
Yeah. No. So I'm of the Seventh-day Adventist persuasion.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is Protestant. Our churches are fairly small, I guess you would say. I mean, there are some mega ones, but you see those mainly in universities.
Oh, okay.
You wouldn't see them like just in the middle of Waukesha, Brookfield, Wisconsin, or anything like that. Actually, now that you mentioned, I'm kind of curious. Like, when did you decide to kind of make that shift from like maybe like I'm going to church for just because my parents are here, and then I'm like, nah, I'm not religious at all. I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, that like it wasn't any hard switch, I guess.
Okay.
It was like a slow dissolution over time. But looking back, I think it's true to say that I never like was strongly like into the faith, I guess,
sure,
of it.
Mm-hmm.
I would attend as a kid because my parents brought me. And then in middle school, that's the word I was looking for, middle school and high school, then I like, it's kind of like still my choice to attend. I didn't like attending Sunday school. Like,
okay,
I felt that was boring, so I kind of stopped going there. But I would still go to like youth group Wednesday nights every week, going to some pastor's house and like talking about the Bible, reading the Bible, and like because there's some people there that I liked hanging out with.
Sure.
Like, and then also Elmbrook had a youth group that was like a boys' club or something for like middle schoolers, like Wednesday nights before at somebody's house, youth groups that I would go to as a high schooler. And those like,
wait, even in high school? How did I not know this?
No, yeah, I was going to
because there's
through Elmbrook Church at some guy's house, even in high school. Definitely the first 2 years, like freshman, sophomore year, junior year. I still went in junior year, actually. Yeah, and there I don't know. It's like we would talk sometimes about like philosophical subjects, which I thought was cool, and there'd be some people that I would like to hang out with. And it was cool to talk about the ideas, but I don't know at that point if I like still even believed it. And then definitely senior year was a transition of sorts.
Okay.
Because I think I stopped going completely in senior year. And I guess I was playing around with a lot of like ideas at the time. I was into solipsism.
I don't know what that is.
I didn't like truly believe it, but I thought it was an interesting concept. And I would try to get other people to believe it for fun. But it's where you're the only thing that exists, like your consciousness, and everything else is a fabrication that you made.
Okay,
that's solipsism, basically.
Oh,
so I would like go around talking to people like I might not even be real, like I might just be in your head, and everyone else.
At you, right?
They laughed.
Yeah,
but I thought it was like interesting. So I don't know. I think probably around senior year of high school would be the strongest point that you can mark as like a crossroads.
It's interesting. I think Rico's AP English class touched a lot on different religions and different points of views.
I remember reading the Tao of Pooh in that book, or in that class, and that was still one of my favorite books.
And what was the other one? Not the Invisible Man, but it's the French guy who.
Oh, Albert Camus.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
What's that book's name?
The
Stranger.
The Stranger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those two were kind of jolted me a little bit because they introduced new ideas that I hadn't really
that's
kind
cool.
of thought about it like in that way. Did that ever play a role in your kind of journey?
And now that you say it probably did.
Okay.
Like I did really I liked him as a teacher, and I liked that class even though I didn't read most of the books. Like I remember not reading Heart of Darkness and not reading the second book we read. I don't remember what it was. Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe or whatever.
Oh yeah, I never read that one either.
But then when we got to like halfway around the year when he introduced Tao of Pooh, that was like a thin book, like 100 pages or something. And I remember reading that in one day, like one night. He was like, "Oh, just read the first chapter," and I read the whole book. And I was like, "This is a fantastic book."
Yes.
So then I was like, I don't know, more engaged and thinking about different subjects and different ideas that I probably hadn't so much before.
You know what other book to just start going back to AP, actually 11 this time around.
Yeah.
Kind of messed with me in 1984.
I actually didn't read that one either.
How? Oh my! Do you know what it's about?
Yeah.
Have you read it now?
No, I still haven't.
Okay, but like you still know the gist.
Yeah, because like we still discussed it in class.
That's
and stuff, true. So I was there for that. I just didn't read the book.
That terrified me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, holy crap! Like a lot like, who's the author? I'm sorry,
George
Orwell. Like he's making these points like a little too convincing. I'm like, no, wait, pause. And I was shocked. So I actually told my mom, I'm like, I'm actually kind of like, I'm not sure about this book. This is the first time I've ever done it, and the only time I ever did. And then I think she told, because she didn't speak English well at the time.
Yeah.
She told like the Spanish translator like in the building or something like that for ES or like people who didn't really know English that well. And then she communicated it to administration, who then communicated it to Gittins.
Wow.
And then
Gittins was the teacher.
Yeah. So then she had me read The Great Gatsby.
Instead? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I remember.
Didn't we read The Great Gatsby the year before though?
Okay, so that's interesting because I only got to West junior year and senior year. I wasn't there for sophomore year.
Oh, really? Why?
I was at South. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Did you live closer to South or something?
I live across the street from South.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
But so my schooling history was, so I went to Bethesda, and then I went to private school, Christian school, and then my brother aged out of it. So then my parents didn't want to put us in public school because reasons.
Yeah.
So then we did what was called at the time IQ Academy, which is the online version of the Waukesha school system. Yeah. Now they call it eAchieve, which is a travesty. IQ Academy is way better branding, but that's neither here nor there.
Just the branding is the travesty?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And then so I did that for 7 and 8. Or no, that's not true. I said for freshman year and then sophomore year, but I hated it. And I was kind of just flunking out of it. It's like, Mom, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So then I was like, so then she put me at South because I wanted to go to the like the health program that they have there because I wanted to be a doctor. So like they have a like a special track if you want to go into the health field.
Take like college classes as a high schooler kind of thing.
Exactly. And then they also have like an engineering track too. But I wanted to do the health one, but I got there too late. So I couldn't even do that. And I was like, and just to be honest with you, I didn't really fit there culturally. I don't know why. Even though I lived there, I guess all the kids are from my area. Yeah. I didn't fit. So then I went to West my junior year. and then that's where I reunited with a lot of my, I guess,
Bethesda.
elementary school kids. I'm like, oh yeah, I know you. I know. Oh my, it's all back.
Were there not
It's all
a lot of
coming back.
Bethesda kids at South? I guess it's kind of far
No,
away.
absolutely not. No, yeah, no.
I would have went to South. I went to Whittier, which is the elementary
Yeah,
school that's
super
like
close.
literally down the hill from South. It's
Literally,
like less than a 2-minute walk.
same block, just
Yeah.
down the hill.
Yeah, I lived close to Whittier, so I would have went to South, but then my family moved, and then so I went to
Oh.
Bethesda starting in 4th grade. So the first half of my elementary school, I was at Whittier.
Oh, dude, I knew that. So
You knew that?
so I was thinking about it, and I was going to talk to you about it because I remember you didn't show up to Bethesda until the last year or the last 2 years, and I was like, I don't know, like you were new there, right?
Yeah. Did you go the whole
That's
time?
I started in 3rd grade, so
Oh, okay.
02, 03. Sorry, 03, 04.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, I don't remember you there in 3rd or 4th.
I was there for 4th, but I was in Mr. Grismer's class.
You were Grismer's
so I
class?
might have been
Okay,
a different
okay,
class
yeah.
than you. So that's why maybe.
No, I was Grismer too.
What? Oh, then yeah, it was that. It was that year.
Do you remember like CJ was there, Christoph?
Yeah.
CJ, who else? Hastings was in our class.
I remember that. Yeah.
All that stuff, and then oh, by the way, did you know Nichols passed away? She was our 4th grade science teacher.
She did.
She passed away a
Oh,
couple of years ago from cancer.
I did not know.
Yeah, that was really sad. And then I don't know why, but my memory is just kind of really good with school stuff for like the people anyway. So our 4th grade math teacher, Cook, Mrs. Cook, Sue Cook.
Yeah, I wouldn't have remembered these names, but now that you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, Mrs. Cook. Yeah. Mrs.
Yeah,
Cook,
she's in Colorado now. Her husband passed away, which is sad.
Okay.
She used to be an avid runner, but she doesn't run anymore.
She definitely looked like a runner. Like she was.
Oh, yeah,
like,
she
thin and
was.
tall. Like she's got that classic runner's shape.
Yeah, and then you had Mrs. Voigt. Remember Voigt?
I remember what. Yep.
She was social studies. That
Yep.
was fun. But okay, so I just had to throw that in there. Like I just remembered you kind of threw in there.
Wait, so
But-
you went to Bethesda for elementary school, at least starting in 3rd grade,
Yeah.
and then you went to a private school, or only your brother?
The three of us went to a private school. So there's my
just,
older brother
like,
Chris,
middle school?
myself, and then Ismirna, my
Why though? Was that
and my
private
sister.
school only a middle school? Or
So my brother aged out of Bethesda,
yeah.
and then instead of driving my brother somewhere and then us having to go to Bethesda, we just kind of decided all to go there.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of how that goes. So I guess wherever my brother aged out of, then we went and just
Yeah.
kind of just followed him around
Okay.
until I aged out and my sister just kind of stayed at South. So I'm sorry, at West. So she went to West all 4 years because of me. So
Oh, I see. Yeah.
although she kind of regrets it now, I think, or something like that.
That's interesting. Like maybe they knew because in sophomore year AP English taught by Mr. Jonas, we
Yeah.
read The Great Gatsby. You weren't there for that.
I wasn't there for
So
that.
then you read The Great Gatsby instead of reading 1984.
Yes.
Okay.
Although I did
Worked
and
out for
end
you.
up circling back to 1984, and I finished, I think, halfway through. Although I did read a lot of that, like Animal Farm. I think we read.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
it was that 11 or 12? I can't remember.
I don't know, but
But
might
I
have
was
been 11.
better suited for that.
Animal Farm, yeah.
After that.
Yeah, that's actually really cool though that like happened to you. It just speaks to like the power of books for like introducing new ideas that can be frightening at times, or like off-putting, or like definitely like changing your life path.
Here, I gotta ask: in your God exists, God doesn't exist, depending in whatever form you want to put in there.
Sure.
Are you in the camp of he does, like there's no such thing as God, like you're delusional, or are you
Wait,
I'm
like,
willing to be convinced with enough evidence, or somewhere in between?
well, I definitely go with the evidence of wherever.
Okay.
So I don't believe in God,
Okay.
and if I like you if I had to bet, I would bet that there isn't one.
Okay.
But I'm not like, yeah, on the spectrum, I would be not 0%. Like I'm not gonna say there is no chance that God exists.
Okay.
I think there's a chance.
Okay.
I just don't think it's a high chance.
Why not?
Okay,
Just give me like an overview, because we can get into apologetics, but that would take all day.
right.
Yeah. So let's kind of fly by that.
Well, okay, so I guess if it's a specific form of God, like Christian God,
Sure.
I feel like
let's start there.
I feel like there are contradictions within that concept
Okay.
that make it not
Troublesome for you.
sensical that a thing would exist like that.
Okay.
If it's a general, abstract form of God,
Mhm.
kind of like pantheism thing, or just you want to say a general creator force, that could exist. Like
Like
I
you can
just
see that.
I just don't have any evidence of that's existence. So
Okay. Like, what would convince you? I'm curious. Like what would have to happen, or what would you have to see, or
so I guess it would be not that I'm not only an empiricist, I'm also like a rationalist, because I think there are some things like this question, that it would be hard to find physical evidence that conclusively makes it the obvious conclusion.
Yeah. Or proves the contrary.
Yeah, so I would probably need a argument that doesn't have any possible defeater, I guess. Like an argument for the existence of God that is sound. Like, the premises are true and the premises follow one to the next. So it'd probably be like philosophy that would do it. Because honestly, the way I see it is, even if it's kind of sad, I guess, but it would probably make me believe. But then, like, rationally speaking, if I was still capable of thinking rationally in this scenario that I'm about to describe, I still think there's room for doubt. Like, for instance, if God himself tells me that he exists, how am I to know that that's just not my own brain doing this?
Okay.
Like, if the stars rearrange themselves in the sky and they say, Wade, you are an idiot. I exist, I am God, acknowledge me. And then everyone else sees it too. That would probably make me believe, but then at some level it's like, even that could be not true. Like, we could be living in a simulation, and in that case they're like, technically there's a God, like there's a creator in like one level above the reality, but like it's not like that person is all powerful. They still are beholden to the laws of physics in their reality,
Okay.
Like, if there's just a person in a lab coat who makes a simulation, are they God? Maybe, like, to the simulation they are. So, like, if some sort of reality distorting thing happens, the whole world acknowledges that it's the case, I think there's still room for doubt that, like, the classic conception of an all-powerful deity exists. It could still be, or, it could have been a different alien civilization who is just messing with us to make us all deluded for some nefarious purpose. Like, those are still possibilities that are open. And in such a crazy scenario, those possibilities aren't that far-fetched compared to any of the other ones. So I would need some sort of logical
sophistry to... I mean, sophistry is kind of bad, but...
Yeah, not sophistry. But yeah, it's basically just logical demonstration of a proposition that can't be anything but true, basically.
Okay. And experientially, how much do you weigh that? So, like, let's say, hypothetically, you're like, okay, God, I'm going to give you a week. Show me some things that are completely out of the ordinary and that would kind of showcase that you're there. But you're only thinking about this. You're not saying anything to anybody else. So there's no tainting of your thought process, and there's no kind of, what's the word, like, there's no way anybody else could know.
But even still, it goes with the first thing I brought up, is this could just be my mind. Like, it could be a creation of my own.
Right. So
like, if I'm looking for signs, I'm more likely to see signs.
Okay, so what if you're not looking for a specific sign and it's just like a kind of like, oh wait, that's I don't know how to explain it. Never mind.
See, that's the thing. Like, I wouldn't rely on an experiential evidence. It would have to be logic. Like, it would,
exclusively. You're saying.
Well, I'm saying, if I'm sure there are scenarios that you could put me in where I would believe it just because, the sheer power of that moment or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then, like, thinking in this cool-headed state right now, I don't think I would be right in believing it, in a situation where all the signs line just right. I think that would be me just, like, confirmation bias, essentially. Like,
sure, yeah.
I'm finding things that I'm
if
just...
I see 3 green cars,
right.
You exist. It's like, well, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Go buy a car lot.
So it would need to be something like the Kalam cosmological argument actually works and there isn't any flaws in it. Like, somebody would have to come up with an argument that I can't poke any holes in, essentially. And there are plenty of arguments for God. It's just all of them, I think, have holes. So
that's fair. How do you see people who do believe in God? Like, would you like do you ridicule them for thinking differently than you, or like for not being as smart as you, or for not like you know what I mean? Like how do you deal with that?
I think it really depends on the person. The way I see it, like, intelligence is not a single thing. It's many things. Like, you have compartments of thought in your brain. Like, not even on the subject of God, you can be very smart when it comes to some subject and not knowledgeable when it comes to another. So I wouldn't classify a person as being stupid if they believe in God. They can be smarter than I am. I just think that when it comes to a specific question, maybe they're not thinking clearly. And I'm sure there are questions that I'm not thinking clearly on.
Sure.
So I think it'd be more like a trade-off of have thought these things through better in some cases and I have in other cases. So I wouldn't want to label somebody in a complete sense as being like less intelligent than I am.
Okay.
But I would just think like, I don't think you're right on this thing, and you're probably smarter than me on lots of other things.
Sure.
So.
But just on this thing,
And then when it comes to like ridiculing people, it really depends on what they say and if they seem to be thoughtful about it, because I've heard plenty of people who believe in God discuss their belief in very thought-provoking, nuanced, intelligent ways. And then I've heard other people say things that it sounds like they're just spitting back out something that they're just regurgitating information.
Right, and then it's just obvious that they are.
So it really depends on if the person seems like they put thought into it or not, that I'm going to like...
Would you say you're dismissive or you wouldn't go that far?
I don't think I'm dismissive out of hand. Of like,
okay.
Just if I know a person believes in God, then I dismiss them. I don't think that's true. I think I would like to listen to what people have to say about the topic first.
No, yeah, that's fair.
But
no, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Like I get into a lot of theological arguments with like my brother especially, but just like over the years I have with other people too. There's one time even I was working at a cafe and I was up at the register after just having finished my break, and on my break I was reading a book. So I still had the book on the counter, and it was face down. And the book was Why I'm Not a Christian by Bertrand Russell. And I was taking his order, and then he asked me what book I'm reading because he couldn't see it. So I lift it up and show him. And then immediately he takes issue with the book I'm reading, and he starts coming at me with arguments for God. He's like, why would you, like, are you an atheist? And I was like, yeah. And then he, we spend 20 minutes while I'm at the register with this customer, and he's just like trying to convince me that God exists. So just like even natural arguments like that I wasn't looking for just kind of have happened over the several years. And it's not like I immediately think this person's an idiot for doing this. Like I want to know what they think, and like I want to see if they have good ideas.
Because okay, so I'm a believer of the Christian persuasion, and but like putting that aside and then putting your atheism aside for a second.
Sure.
Like I feel like there are some good effects of or like some good parts of religion in general that positively affect society. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, so like I mean, for one, I think the one that people point to the most is a sense of community, where like for me, who works by himself, who has one or two other coworkers who are I hired them, so it's not that. It's a different kind of relationship than a coworker. You can
never really get like a close relationship with you. Like there's always a little bit of distance.
A little bit of a distance there, yeah. So church has been a kind of a saving grace for me in that sense, where it's like, okay, I'm kind of on equal footing with everybody, and then it's like, okay, I'm able to talk about my experiences and whatever, and then you also have your friends. But so like, would you agree, or what are your thoughts on the fact that like, or do you think that community portion is just kind of imagined and kind of just like a...
No, I definitely think that's one of the strongest things that religion, I guess, as a whole has going for it, is that fostering community and making people that don't really know each other very well care about each other and feel like they belong to something that's bigger than themselves. I think those are all very important things.
I think so too.
I just think that while that is a way that seems to be maybe easier, or because it's been established for so long that people feel like an easy time getting into, I don't think religion's the only way to get that.
Agreed.
So like from my perspective, if there's a lot of problems with religion, and I would prefer in an ideal world that nobody believed in these things, I still think you could get community other ways.
Sure.
So, but I think, like I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I do think that there are good aspects to religion.
I think another part is that it provides emotional, some sort of centeredness to where like people have a higher power that they can cling on to. So whether it be the Christian God or some other religion, if you're Taoist or whatever it is, this world already has so many problems. It's comforting to know that there's something to hold on to. Now, from your perspective, you'd be like, well, you're just kind of making that up. And like it's something I would say to that effect is like, true.
Wait,
Except,
really? You would say that?
no, I mean, it's a valid point,
Okay.
except for the fact that it doesn't seem to work the same way when you're talking about like just thinking depression away or other mental illnesses. You see what I mean? So like where people find comfort in Jesus and like he can help me with my issues and things like that. Like I don't know why that level of imaginative thing that you like that you would ascribe to it, like why it doesn't seem to also like extend to other like things in my
thought on
estimation.
like the difference between just thinking depression away and then not being depressed because you believe in some higher power is because in the one case you actually believe it. I think like it's almost impossible to think depression away because you know you're depressed. It's like you just have to deny something that you know about yourself. Whereas in the case of like believing in God, like people who believe in God, they believe. Like it's like a placebo. Like the placebo is not really going to have an effect if you know you're taking a placebo. At least in some cases, it depends on the placebo.
Right.
But so that's how I would see it. Is like in one case you're doing a thing and really truly believing that thing. In the other case, you're doing it knowing that you're just trying to trick your brain into working differently. Like I feel like that's a pretty big difference between the thought process that like the things that are going on in the brain. Like you're not believing in God because you think that this belief will help you. You're like, first you actually believe, and then maybe it helps you. You know what I'm saying?
No, because I mean it seems like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. It's like on the one hand you can believe something so powerful exists, but you can't believe something else away with the same amount of power. Does that make sense?
Okay, so
or maybe I lost you.
Yeah, you believe the thing that God exists, but are you doing that to get rid of your depression? Like, I don't think you are.
Okay.
I think you believe that first, and then that helps you, I guess, maybe for some people, stave off depression.
Okay.
So it's not like you have to deny your depression. You're going through a different route to get rid of it. Whereas if you're trying to just think away your depression, there's no other route. There's like no intermediary buffer thing to get rid of it. It's like there's no comforting source. Like you could believe something else to think away your depression. I guess you could focus on like positive outcomes or whatever, but like doing it directly, I feel like is almost like you get in a ineffective spiral because it's you know that you're depressed, so you just have to somehow it's like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It's easier to do if you believe that you're not pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Somebody else is doing it for you. Is that a good analogy? I'm not sure. Like
I'm not terribly convinced by it, but I mean I see where you're going with it. Yeah.
And then also what you were saying earlier before about like people like emotional centeredness or like believing in the higher power. I don't think that's straightforwardly or always a good thing. I see that going both ways, good and bad. Like I guess it can help people get through tough times if they think there's a greater reason for their struggles, or like it's part of God's plan, or like it'll all work out in the end, or like this person died, but I'll see them after I'm dead too, so it'll be okay. But then I think it also like it works like pathologically too. Like I saw this in my mom a lot growing up, and I was always annoyed by it. When I was in high school, she was going to college for her nursing degree, and she would sometimes, because she was raising kids and she had a job, so she was overworked and didn't have enough time to study.
That's terrible.
So when she would fail a test, and sometimes like she would fail a whole class and have to retake it, and that was horrible. She would blame herself for the failure. When she succeeded, she would attribute that to God. So I think it can also have a negative
picking.
Yeah, it can have a negative effect on one's self-esteem too, because the good things, those are God did that for you. The bad things, I'm at fault there. It's like, so you're not to be praised for any of the good things you do. Like, where is your it's dependence on this other idea for your life to be good, instead of recognizing that you were responsible for these things, or at least in some sense you were. Like, you studied for the test, rather than God helps me.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I mean, I think there's a balance there. to where like you don't have to just attribute the bad things to you and the good things to God.
Well, you don't have to, certainly.
Yeah,
But
no, yeah, definitely not. And I mean, and I think it's somewhere in the middle to where like if you don't study for a test, you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But there are some times where you study for the test and you still fail.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not necessarily on God or on one way or the other. But
I mean, that points out a good thing right there too, is how are you to know what any of it is God's doing? If you study for a test and you fail, if you study for a test and pass, and why would you attribute any of these to God's doing at all?
So that okay, then no, that's fair. So that actually brings up a question that I've been thinking about all week. It's the fact that like the non-view of God, and I guess we're going to apologetics now, which I kind of wanted to avoid, and I'm sorry about that. But kind of like, or I guess I'm just curious what you think about it, because the view that there is no God begs the question of like you think that, or one would think that everything is just physical and physically centered, but at the end of the day, I would say we're more emotional and like more emotional beings than we are just chemical reactions happening in our heads. Does that make sense?
No, like what's the difference?
So I mean, if it was just so easy, you could chemically have people feel anything you want at any point in time.
I think at some point in the future you will be able to do that.
Okay. Wait. So
I just think the neurons, all the connections between them,
sure,
the chemistry that's happening in your brain, I think that's a very complex thing that we don't have the full knowledge and ability to manipulate yet.
So from your perspective, it is just a matter of science, not a matter of there's nothing unique to you. You're just chemicals happening in your head.
There's still something unique to you. Like my DNA is different than yours, and but
the only differences are physical.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So there's nothing different about anybody else other than the DNA makeup, which made them that way,
and their experiences along in their lifetime that have changed their bodies.
So then, how does choice work into that?
Oh, I don't believe in choice in a technical sense.
I'm curious. That's like I don't believe in choice. That's just intriguing to me. I'm not going to argue on it. I'm actually just kind of curious. Can you go into that, please?
Yeah. Apologies for any of the people that have listened to every episode of this podcast, because
just boil it down for me.
There are a few things that I've talked about, maybe too many times for the type of listener who listens to every podcast. But for the type of listener who doesn't, then it'll be perfectly fine. Okay, so the way I would see it is you can think of, like, depending on how you conceptualize what choice means, then sure. I could agree. Yeah, like I do make decisions. But then, like, I don't make decisions to make those decisions. Like, I'm not in charge of the decisions I make. Like, I can feel like, sure, it's still me, this body, doing it. But some, like, separate, what maybe you think of as, like, the you that's living inside your head or whatever, your consciousness, your soul, your spirit or whatever, making decisions that are independent of the laws of nature or like the physics, like some free will that works outside of the universe and inserts its hand into the universe that you use to do your actions.
Wait, that's what you feel is happening?
No, I don't think I don't think that idea makes any sense.
Okay.
So, like, what I would say is that let's just say every action that I make that could have been, at least in theory, a different action, is informed by every previous thing that has happened. So, like, whether that's my previous brain state or something that's happening in the environment around me, it goes into, you could think of it as like an algorithm where there's, input of everything around me, every single possible sense is the input. And then there is some output that there's code, metaphorically speaking.
No, yeah, I feel you.
In my brain that is just churning, constantly producing behavior. And since I am part of this body, I feel responsible for that behavior. It's me. And because of this, sense of consciousness in my brain, I feel sort of illusory authorship or sense of responsibility for the fact that I chose to do this thing. But I think if you really boil it down and look at it completely, I'm just essentially the same idea as a robot that you program to do certain things.
Okay.
Like if-then statements, just millions of those in my brain.
Right.
If I feel, because of everything that's happening in my body, thirsty and there's water in front of me, I will grab it and drink it. And then if circumstances are slightly different, maybe I won't drink it just yet. Maybe I'll wait a few minutes. Maybe I'll do something. So I think...
So like concepts of love
are
illusionary.
Well, no, you can still feel the love. I would just think that I didn't have a choice in the love,
Okay. So then crime, no choice.
Yeah, I wouldn't, like, obviously the person chose to do the thing. That means the program that's running in their brain, it would only have done that given the situation they're in, which isn't to say that, we should let everybody do crime, because that negatively impacts other people.
Sure.
I would think we should try to change the program that's in their brain, like help them out, give them comfort, give them positive relationships, re-educate them, whatever it may take, so that now the program that's running in their brain doesn't do crime. And then, if people are repeat offenders or doing horrible things, then I do think it still makes sense to put them in rooms, in jails, lock them away so they don't continue harming other people. I just don't think it makes sense in like a deep sense to blame them for it. Like to think that retribution, I don't really think makes a lot of sense. And I think that's actually a positive of the
religion.
No. I think it's a positive of the letting go of this idea of free will. There's no room really, there's no rational room for hatred or for holding grudges against people. Like you can say like, yeah, that person did a bad thing, but it's not truly their fault, and now we just need to work towards making sure they don't do that bad thing again, and making sure that now that they understand that it was a bad thing, so that the code that's running will adjust itself.
I think it's a very intellectual thing to say, in terms like to tell somebody, hatred's not worth it, bro. Like, or it's not really a real thing, or it's not really worth to pursue it.
Yeah. Obviously, it still happens. You still feel that hatred, but I don't. Yeah, right. Like you just said, it's not worth it. I don't think it at the very end of it. I don't think it makes sense to hate.
I think hate has its place because there's some evils in this world that is right to hate.
Okay, I guess maybe we could take it that way. Like if you're hating the thing, like the action, like hating murder, for instance, sure, you could hate the bad things, but I don't think it makes sense to hate the people who do the bad things.
Okay, I'm in agreement there.
Yeah.
So to that vein, I feel like if it's okay to hate something, that kind of opens the path to a lot of other things, right? To where, or I guess it just sounds very heady to me to like explain to somebody like, hey, my point of view is that like, oh, this is just you're just an algorithm and you're gonna enjoy this. And like to explain life like that seems a little depressing to me.
Why is it depressing? You still have your emotions. They still run. Like you still enjoy things. You still experience sadness and exhilaration and fear and nervousness.
But then taking agency out of it makes me feel like I'm, or there is no me. I guess in your theory, right? There is no you in there making choices and like enjoying things for the sake of it. It's just an algorithm thing. But there is no you. It's just an algorithm, right?
Well, it's still you. It's just not like this metaphysical separation of matter that, it's not some you from the outside. It's not from spiritual you. It's like your body, everything that you're doing, everything that you're feeling, that's still Josue, You can still differentiate these different, meat machines that everybody has or is. Yeah. Okay, here's another way to look at it. Like, this is one that some other people that have talked about this have used, so I'll just use it too. You can imagine if you're in the forest and there's a bear, and the bear comes and rips your arm off. Are you going to hate that bear? Like, does it make sense?
I'm going to be focused on healing myself. I don't have time for hate.
Let's say you get back home and now you're safe, but your arm's gone. Does it make sense to have a grudge against that bear, or to hate that bear, or to like blame that bear, or think that bear is a bad bear, bad person, like bad thing? Like the bear was just running on it was just running on its bear behaviors.
Right. And that's fair. So I guess that's where the Christian and the non-Christian view like this or
the monism and the dualism.
Yeah, well, like in the sense that like the evolutionist view would say that it's just like we're all just animals. We're just higher evolved animals, whereas the Christian point of view would say, no, there's something special to you. There's a you in there that isn't just chemical reactions, I guess.
But what is the basis for that thought? Like, why think that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the specifics, or maybe I'm not understanding your question.
Like, why believe that? Like, what is it about what you've experienced in life that makes you believe that that's true?
Because we have different experiences than animals, and there's something to us that I would say the animals don't have. I'm from a Christian's perspective, where I would say like we have the ability to make choices. All that animals have, they run on instinct, whereas I feel we run on something different. Does that make sense?
I get what you're saying. I just don't think it's true.
That's fair.
I think it's essentially it's like anthropomorphism, like just because, or like the same sense of like
you talk to your dog and you think it like it.
Or not anthropomorphism, anthropocentrism.
Anthropocentrism.
Yeah. Or like
I guess it is anthropocentric. Yeah, that's fair.
This may sound harsh, and I don't mean it this way, but like the inability to think outside yourself, essentially. Like I am. This is what my experience, and I'm going to think that is special because it's me. It's the same like kind of root that is in like nationalism and all sorts of other areas. Like this is where I happened to be born, so this is the best place on earth. This is like the gender I happen to be, so it's the best one. This is the best. This is the animal I happen to be, so it is the special one. It is the different one. But it does
work in the opposite, right? Where you could say, okay, well maybe I'm not special, but I like my daughter, I like my son, and I think they're special. How is that anthropocentric in your view? Like how is that wrong?
I mean, that's essentially, it's like, it's one step removed from the self. It's still just,
it's not self anymore, though.
They share 50% of your DNA. Like, they're your offspring. They're reflections of you, in a sense, at least 50%. Yeah. So it's still, it's like, this is actually this little sidetrack, little note that I find interesting.
Okay.
But in so many movies and commercials and TV shows, the care for the family is shown as some, like, virtue. And I think, sure, it's good to care for your family, but it's like, I think that's the absolute bare minimum, like, of human virtues. Like, you're
the bare minimum.
You're like caring for the things that you created, the things that you produce, the things that share your DNA, above the outside world, the strangers that are actually pretty much different from you. It's so like parochial. It's so care about what's close to you, care about your own life rather than anybody else's. So, like...
Wait, why would you add the rather than anyone else's in there?
Or, like, above anyone else's, I suppose. Care about them more than you care about other people.
Okay, well,
who aren't
you could argue the fact that, like, your family's the one that helps you survive, and the most people, because you can't really handle everybody. You can't... You can only connect with so many people at a time.
True.
So the family unit is the most common denominator to do that, and then you could say that that's one unit, and different families together are different units, and such, and kind of go on and so on and so forth.
True, but I don't see why that's any virtue then. If it's just caring about survival.
I don't know how to walk you through that. I'm not nearly smart enough to.
But that was a sidetrack anyway. Just something I notice sometimes. Like, it's like, oh, you're such a good person for caring about your child. It's like, really? Are you? You're just a person for that, I think.
I mean, so then. I think it's worth mentioning, though, because if you think about it, people like to be liked and like to be recognized. Mm-hmm. So by you saying, so by me saying, Mom, I have enjoyed your company and your love to me, is not, or I feel like there's more gravitas to that than to just say, hey, I applaud you for doing the absolute bare minimum. You are killing it out here with the basics. It doesn't. Like, or to me, there's something special about that.
I mean, yeah, you can express your gratitude and not do it in a way that seems like it's undermining it, but by saying, I mean, I feel like maybe that's the type of gratitude you should extend to all people rather than just. I'm just saying the care and concern should extend beyond
your family.
Beyond the family.
100%. Yeah. No question.
Okay.
I feel like the family is just the node.
Yeah.
And then it expands from there.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't feel like it should be kind of tossed to the side. Like, it's just the basics. Because, like, I'm just thinking about, like, an orphan, for example.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like a family would be more than a basic, like, more than just the most basic thing that they could get, to some extent. Because you could have food, you could go to school, you could go to work and have people around you, but have, like, somebody feel ownership of you, or like, feel like you belong somewhere.
Yeah.
I feel like that has special weight that you can't really get anywhere else.
I guess I don't mean the basics of survival. I mean, just mean like the basics of, like, decency, like basics of morality, or anyway, like just caring about your family.
Fair.
That should be something that's just kind of pre-programmed. Like,
Okay, yeah.
It's like a
No
natural
complaints.
instinct to care about your children. I don't think that needs to be expressed as some virtue. And
What are your thoughts on like religion having such a huge effect and impact on the way the country was built? Like, and by country I mean the U.S. and how it's kind of almost in every single artifact. It's in the Pledge of Allegiance, et cetera, et cetera. How do you feel about that? And kind of like compare and contrast it to what you think the country would be like if we didn't have that.
well, okay, so it's interesting you say the Pledge of Allegiance, because the under God thing wasn't added in the Pledge of Allegiance until the 1950s. I'm pretty sure when McCarthyism was terrorizing the nation.
Shout out to McCarthy.
No, he doesn't need any shout outs. Worst Wisconsin senator or governor, whichever one he was.
I think he was a senator.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then like also like there was those sorts of things, notion in God added into government. A lot of those in like the 50s, like what we're seeing now in some southern states of putting the 10 Commandments inside of the.
God. I'm going to talk about that in bad examples of Christianity. Let's
government buildings.
Yeah.
But then if you look at the founding, obviously lots of people at the time were religious, but like the founding fathers seemed like separation of church and state. Like they seemed
for good
to be
reason.
Right. They seem to be mindful about the power that the church can have over
Agreed.
government and wanting to make them separate and make them not into some horrible downward spiral.
So like separate that from church from God. So like they believed in like apart from the church down here and the separation, like a lot of them just believed in God in general.
You look at like the Jefferson Bible, it seemed like Jefferson probably believed in God, but he disagreed with a lot of like the Christians of the time and what they thought. So yeah, like they had some conception of God, but they didn't want the specific partisan or like policies of the churches at the time to have a say in government, or at least a overwhelming say.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think the amount that religion was involved in the founding of the nation was fine, because it seemed like they were doing their best to not have it be involved. But
they anchored like a lot of the unalienable rights to that, right? To their belief in God. We believe these truths to be self-evident.
Did they believe those because of God, or did they just believe those, though? I wonder. Do you know?
I think they believed it because of God. Personally, I mean, I think I'm not. I mean, I don't want to misquote any like the Constitution.
So are you thinking that if they didn't believe in God, that they wouldn't believe in inalienable rights? Then they wouldn't put that thing into the Constitution.
No, I don't think I would go that far. But I would venture to say that our country would be much different if it didn't have that Christian basis on it.
I'm sure it would, and I wonder. I think it probably would be better, but
would you? Okay.
Yeah, and I definitely.
In what way? Like, just let me put you on the spot. Just give me like one example. Like, and you think it'd be one? And again, I'm starting from the jump, from 1776 to now. If there wasn't that Christian influence, like, how do you feel it would be better?
I think maybe churches would be taxed, and that would be helpful, and also make sure that
I have no opinion on that actually. I'm neutral.
It's okay. So it's like, especially when churches do fundraise or do influence the government through lobbying or through endorsing senators or whatnot. It's like a clear easy stream of cash flow when there's no taxation going on there. Like they would have less power in influencing the government if they were taxed.
Agreed.
And they would have, to the extent that churches do exploit people, they would have less power to exploit people for their money if they were taxed. A lot of people, if you're Christian, you feel that need. You have to be a supporter of the church. If you're going to be a good Christian, you have to donate some of your money to it. And like that, I guess, can be good depending on what the church is doing. But I feel like with more, and also you see so many churches, like it seems almost wasteful to me how there's like a church on every block. Like how much attendance can those churches possibly have? And But
culturally, it's different, bro. I think that's fair. Like, isn't it also wasteful to have Uber and Lyft, and everything else, and Instacart, and
I don't know. Like, is it wasteful to have Uber and Lyft? I mean, they're both being paid for, whereas these churches, I feel like they linger on for longer than their lifespan otherwise would have if they had to pay taxes. And also like to the extent that churches do operate as a business, whether that's supporting their priests or having people on payroll.
Yeah.
I don't know why there's special exclusion for them in the sense of taxation.
I don't know.
So
I mean, I don't disagree with you.
And then
I mean, I think it would put a lot of. I mean, I don't think the founding fathers kind of foresaw this,
right.
but it would bring in a lot of, or pull in the reins on a lot of the greed that has seeped into the church, to where before they were kind of the bulwark of society. Now, I guess some people still view them that way. Some people view them as the bane of society. But I don't disagree that it would put in a rein on a lot of the, can I say, evil that a lot of churches produce nowadays.
Yeah, especially like those televangelists or like mega churches where they've got like the
started.
Kenneth Copelands of the world who are like literal billionaires through their being a priest or pastor, and have like, that would be less possible.
I mean,
if there
I feel
was some taxation.
like if like a lot of the people we look up to, like let's say MLK. If MLK were to be alive now, I feel like he would be ashamed of a lot of what people call Christian these days.
Probably.
I feel like a lot of our founding fathers would be ashamed of what people call Christian these days.
Yeah, especially since I feel like there's been a switch, and it was like, what, in the 1970s or 80s or something, where like Christianity used to be more Democratic aligning, where now it's more Republican aligning, where like MLK definitely wouldn't have been a modern day Republican.
Or Democrat, I would
Probably
say.
not. Yeah.
Because, I mean, for reasons, but just kind of going into like the bad part of Christianity, I cannot underestimate how terrible Catholicism in its prior form, and maybe in its today form, I'm not really sure, but in its prior form, and kind of just, and not even just Catholicism, I guess, like exclusively, but how with the Crusades, and like, if you don't believe what I believe, you're done. because God says so.
Right.
And like, he told me to come and kill you because you're of a different color than me.
Yeah.
Just so you know, like, I like, this is what I want. I think that's terrible. And then, and it's like brought on a huge like mar and like scar on what other people who maybe aren't atheists think of Christianity, but would like lean into other types of religion. And I think it's just like a shame that a lot of that.
I think the Catholic Church has probably been just collecting nothing but bad reputation.
I think it's gonna get worse personally
for hundreds of years. You got the Crusades, like you've got, so many splinter groups separating from the Catholic Church, like Martin Luther and like Calvinism. Like they're all just like, you guys are awful. Like we're not doing it your way. And then now over the past 100 years, you got growing reports of child abuse and all sorts of horrible things going on in Catholic churches all over the world. They have their
own country.
That's true.
That for a second.
It's a tiny country, but they do. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what size it is. It's a country.
Yeah.
And one can only imagine the kind of things that goes on there personally. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to bash or Catholicism right now, but the point is like, and I guess, I mean, I don't want to just say them, because nowadays what people call Protestant pisses me off, because a lot of like what I think Christ espouses for and goes for, I try to look for that in like some of these churches and some of these sermons, and I'm just like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what this is all about. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, a lot of these evangelicals who are sold out for a certain candidate, let's just put it that way, I don't understand the Christian basis for idolatry of a man. Does that make sense to you?
No, I get that.
I've never really understood it, and how everybody just kind of goes along with it. And by everybody, I mean kind of a majority here.
Like 49%.
49%. I think it's so sad. How, and again, I'm just talking about the Christian persuasion here, and like, if we're talking about Islam, how even just saying the word, you think of just bombings and mass killings and things like that. And again, let's assume they're right. What the fuck are you doing bombing buildings, yo? What is this? And they would say they're extremists. They're not with us. I get it. But the point is that religion can be abused, bro.
Definitely.
Like, it's, and then it throws a stain on everybody else. It's like, is this your God? Is this your leader? Like, I don't like, and then it pushes people away from like saying, if you're so Christian, explain this, and this, but then the this, and this becomes so long that it's just, it's a bridge too far. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the wall just becomes way too high for you to say, nah, man, whatever Christ you sign up for, I don't want him, and I don't think he exists because this is way too incongruent. Does that make sense?
No, I feel that like all the time. And honestly, I'd probably go further than you by saying like that's one of the reasons that I'm not a big fan of religion in general, is because it seems like it is a device that is like a tribalistic device that is way too easily taken like overboard, like into the violence of hating the out group. Like I can get that there's some good to like the flip side of that, like loving the in group. I guess I would rather there not have to be a distinction between the in group and the out group.
Yeah,
but maybe that's not possible. But still,
there has to be. What are we doing?
How easily it can go to hating the other, hating the non-Christian, hating the different denomination of Christian, and then acting on that like that. It seems like it switches something in people's brains that's dangerous too easily compared to, I don't know.
So
religion.
you said it was a tool. Why do you think it's lasted so long I mean, from your perspective? Because it's just too easy. It's just too good.
It is. I mean, it is pretty good at what it does. Like if from like an evolutionary perspective,
okay, if
you're killing rival groups, that's pretty helpful to your own survival of your own group and of your own self. You know, if you can easily band with the people that of your in group to maybe not kill, but you could convert to expand this culture at the expense of other cultures. That seems like it's favorable to organisms into the future, like favorable to growth. So it's like, regardless of its truth value, it seems like it's effective at perpetuating itself.
Yeah.
And also, so many religions, maybe even probably most of them, have such an emphasis on having lots of kids, so that you can.
Which ones? I don't.
Well, like
Catholicism, I guess, is
like Christianity in general, like is opposed, like, and most forms of Christianity that I can think of are opposed to like birth control, or like at least abortion for sure.
Abortion for sure, yeah.
But even some of them go so far as just birth control in general, and like then they want you to probably just have unprotected sex after marriage, so that those kids will keep popping out. Islam is same thing there. It's like it's a recipe for growth, really.
Recipe for growth? Oh.
Like the religion in general, it's a recipe for growth through, lots of kids, killing outgroups, or converting outgroups.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that kind of reminds me of something that I was thinking about a couple of days ago. It's the fact that, like, just, again, from the Christian persuasion, I find it interesting how God doesn't shy away from, or like, in Scripture, talking about how terrible his people were, and air quotes, right? So, like, you have David, who did terrible things. You have a lot of Israelite and Judean kings who did a lot of terrible things. And I'm a fan of the fact that he doesn't shy away from saying the bad parts of each of his people, because it goes to show that nobody's perfect. And even then, nobody gets off scot-free. Does that make sense? So, like, nobody just kind of gets away with it because you're part of my group. Whereas today, I feel like if you're part of the in group, you can do a lot of terrible stuff and people will just overlook it and be like, well, it's kind of whatever. Just, just kind of go away, and just like it'll just kind of blow away. I feel like that honesty of just holding people accountable and accountability is missing, and that's terrible. And I think religion does, or bad religion does, have a role in that, in a big way.
Yeah, I can see that.
And not to mention, like, religion also does lend itself to being overrun by eccentric leaders.
I think that's kind of just a problem.
But I think there's just a lot, like, in general.
It's a problem with, like, power. Like, you have this, like, hierarchy where the person at the top has so much control over everybody else underneath them that, like, that it's hard to avoid that going to your head. And yeah, so, like, in politics, you've got that happening. In religious groups or cults, you've got that happening.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I've noticed that a lot of the movements, I would say, particularly in the left and the right, well, not particularly left and right, that's a stupid thing, but while not, or particularly in the left, while espousing to, like, not be religious or anything like that, does have religious tendencies.
Like what?
if you're not part of us, we don't want you.
Yeah, that's like just tribalism.
Okay.
Where, I mean, this is one thing that some people say.
That's kind of what you equated religion to.
Well, I was saying like religion is a good tool for exacerbating tribalism.
Sure. Okay.
So then maybe like the underlying, like the thing that you're talking about, like wouldn't be religious. I guess you could, people say like religious fervor, or like they compare things to religion a lot. Maybe it's just me, but in my mind I like to reserve religion for when we're talking about supernatural beliefs. But yeah, if you want to say like there's a religious tendencies on the left for, tribalism, then I guess, in spirit generally I would agree with that.
And I only point out the left specifically to point out that they're the ones that particularly don't see religion as something valuable, or espouse for it not to be valuable at all. So that's the only reason why I say like it's religious in nature but not really religious, because the right is just manipulating religion to do whatever the heck they want and to say whatever they want, and to just pull people along to whatever it is that they want to say at that specific time, which, to be honest, I think is even worse, because whereas I feel like on the left people don't know or don't feel like their experiences are religious. I mean, there's a lot of chanting, a lot of there's a lot of judging people by today's standards of something they did in the past.
Yeah.
There's, again, you mentioned the tribalism. There's manifestos and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I also think these things are bad.
I mean, I agree. I mean, I fear that if people don't recognize the religious nature, that they're going to fall prey to the same thing that the right is falling into. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it's very unsatisfying to many people, but I often try to, if I can, separate myself from the left and right. Even though
that goes without saying.
I don't know. Even though maybe if you ask me a long list of questions of like what I think certain policy decisions should be, I would be on the left. I just don't want to put myself
I agree
in the group of people who are so tribalistic, and so.
And kind of before we go into that, let me just say this, that I feel like another example of why I feel like a lot of, or another way that the left is kind of religious without knowing it, is that they worship self and feelings. I feel like whatever you feel and whoever you are, that is God to you and should be God to everyone else. In the sense of like, I think of myself as such because I am my own God, and you need to address me as such. Does that not sound religious to you, or?
Okay, so I mean, if you put it that way, it can be, but I mean, there's no supernatural claims going on anyway, or at least generally not. So in my mind, it's still a distinguishing factor between religion and non-religion, but it's still bad. It's still because I've used that kind of language before, I guess, of saying like in a metaphorical sense, maybe everybody has a God, everybody has something that is their highest value, but in a literal sense, it's not a God, it's not actually religious.
I think, or
I feel like if we
phrasing it that way, or framing it that way,
I can go along with the spirit of what you're saying. I just feel like if we define what's religious or what's religion as things that involve ritual and a highest value, and just a general belief system, even if that belief system is not metaphysical in nature, if that belief system is purely grounded in the physical world, if those are all religion, then I feel like it kind of
cheapens,
makes the word less valuable, because then so many things become religion. Like
sounds familiar.
Like what do you mean?
Words not meaning anything that they used to mean, or et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, just to kind of finish off the bad religion part, I think it's just terrible how people have hijacked Christianity and a lot of other religions by introducing the idea of compelling and forcing and just shaming people into doing things. Whereas I think it's just evil, personally, to where like, you're, again, like you said, the tribalism. It's just, you're either with us or against us. And if you were ever in the past against our current thinking, you're garbage. And I think that's goes on both sides. I don't want to dunk on the right, and I don't want to dunk on. Well, you know what? Let's just equally dunk it, because it's just kind of pathetic out here. Okay, so here's kind of some thoughts I had.
Okay.
So like, how do you feel about everything being political in society nowadays?
I mean, I don't know if to what extent it actually is. I don't like the idea of it becoming that.
Okay.
But do you think everything is?
I think it's becoming more and more every day.
Yeah, things are getting more polarized,
like,
for sure.
if you drink a certain kind of beer, you're with them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's definitely happened recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, those types of things aren't good, but also, like, it's definitely companies feeding into it and doing it on purpose for, like, PR gains, I guess. It's like so many things that exist, companies that exist. I don't think there's much a point, or I don't think it's that good for them to take any stances on anything at all, really. Like,
what do you mean? There's of course there's positive things to this. June's coming up. If your logo isn't a certain way, I feel like people will start shaming you or applauding you one way or the other.
Yeah, that definitely.
And then
happens.
that helps the bottom line. So I don't, or I guess I'm lost.
Oh, I mean, sure, it helps the bottom line. I just don't think that's like a good thing for society. Like, I think.
Okay, yeah, I agree 100%.
Coca-Cola should be free to not have, rainbow themed cans for a month, like,
Agreed.
or ever. Like, they should just.
Agreed.
I don't know. Maybe they should just make their cans look the same in perpetuity. Like,
I'm in agreement.
I don't think there needs to be some obligation to jump on to every cause, even if the causes are good. I don't think I think it's, to me, the main reason I feel this way, I think, is because it feels false, and it feels like it's pandering when, like, a cereal company feels the need to say that they're with some cause. Like, who are you doing this for? You like, it's just a stunt, really.
Yes.
It's feels hollow and fake, and like you're just doing it for the numbers
On either side.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A, I'm looking at you.
Yeah. Like, I feel like maybe it'd just be better if they stuck to what they did, and then that would lessen this sort of, like, polarization of, like, everybody's grouping onto one side or the other side.
Agreed. And I mean, I was actually going to mention that too, that I feel like we're polarizing at a faster rate than we were before.
That's probably true.
And it's, I guess, spiraling the sense of community downward, because I don't want to look at you and say, oh, he's a liberal, so I have to talk to you differently than somebody who's not. Yeah. I want to feel free to criticize Trump and Biden and Kamala and what's the other guy? Somebody else on the rights,
DeSantis?
Yeah, DeSantis, equally, without feeling like you're going to look at me differently, or, I mean, you can look at me differently, but, like, there's still a sense of community and a sense of, like, it's okay to have a different opinion without you losing my friendship. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like we're losing that at a faster rate.
Yeah, it's like birds of a feather flock together, and it's more and more the need for that. Like, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a society, like, definitely it's societally brought on, where, like, you feel like you can't be friends with a person who has different opinions than you because other people think you're weird. But it's also, like, now reaches, like, within, like, you feel it yourself, like you want to push that person away if they have a drastically different opinion than you do.
And I think that's evil, to be honest with you. To want to push somebody away who thinks differently than you. Yeah. I think that's the worst.
I've been against that forever. And even just, like, on a practical reason. Like, if you push people away, they're only going to get more extreme. And
right.
If you say if you are a very left-wing person, I think you probably should, it would be in your interest and the society's interest to have friends with right-wing people so that you can, like, talk and, maintain friendship even though you have disagreements, and then you exchange ideas. It keeps people more together more in the center, I guess. And then if you push every relationship away that's different from you, these people are only going to get more and more different from you, and I mean that in a bad way. Like, it's just going to cause more and more conflict. And
let me just say one more time, I hate how Christianity is being used as a weapon to do that. It boils my blood.
Yeah, it seems like I think that really started ramping up in, what was it?
16? No.
Well, I was thinking, what was it, Ronald Reagan, or was it George H.W. Bush, where Christianity really started being tied to politically to the right?
I think that's Reagan for sure.
Reagan, yeah.
All the way back then. We weren't even a thought.
We were, yeah. But just, escalating since then.
I find issue with a lot of people being okay with words losing their meaning. How do you feel about that? Or are you okay with just letting it kind of flow as the people want, because language is a construct anyway?
Yeah, I'm more of a word purist than most people
Okay.
that I know personally are, for sure. Like, I think it makes communication much easier
And precise.
and precise if words retain their meanings over time. And I guess there's going to be some slow shift that's perhaps unavoidable, just a generational change. But yeah, like, I guess if every conversation were to make sure to include, we stop and say, what do you mean by that word? What's your definition of that word? Then it can be overcome, but that's like unrealistic and nobody does that. So it's okay. This goes into another thing I was thinking about the past like month or so, is one reason I think these words, we should try to keep them meaning what they've meant in the past. And if we want a new word to mean it, then just create a new word to mean it.
Frindle, looking at you.
What?
Do you remember that book?
No.
Okay, I'll tell you later.
But one thing that I've been thinking over the past month is I have this idea that there's already like a Venn diagram that's never completely overlapped for every single concept and idea and word any two people are possibly ever saying to each other. Like, basically the idea is there's always some amount of miscommunication, even if it's, 1% or whatever. So like, we're having a conversation and the thoughts and things that are prompted in your mind when I say a certain word, even if the word is like pond, you have a different conception of pond than I do.
Right.
So the more that we try to keep these words at a certain meanings, the better we'll be able to actually understand and like, pass thoughts between our brains. Whereas
because communication is already difficult.
Like we're already not even thinking of the same thing when we say simple words. So like, it is already a difficulty. So you're making it only more difficult if all of a sudden I want to start using pond in a different way.
Agreed. And then lastly, how do you feel about, I guess, circling back to the politicization and the changing of word, or I guess how words are being weaponized to mean different things? I have a fear, or not a fear, but rather a strong repulsion to the fact that there's no accountability anymore in terms of like, specifically for those in power.
Oh, okay. Because I was just saying, like, I feel like there's over accountability.
Oh, no, yeah. Sorry. I meant like specifically for those in power, which affect our daily lives, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to get better, bro. I don't know.
See, that is a case where it kind of makes me think of that thinking yourself out of depression thing. It's like the abuse of power and the spiraling out of control of, let's just say democracy in general. That only gets worse the less people believe in the democracy or like have hope for it. So it's like this vicious cycle that's hard to break yourself out of. I feel like the way you fix these things is by having a informed and active like citizenship. So like everybody has to go vote. Like all of the young people have to vote, and you have to vote in local elections and everything like that. Like if you continue to have a society where most people don't care about politics, I feel like there's a way to do it where you can care and you can be active, but you cannot be so judgmental and have it involved in every single interpersonal relationship in your life. Like you can save your, or at least try to save your politics for when you're voting, rather than every single pushing everybody out of your life.
Yeah.
But like, you have to be active in these things. If you continue to not vote, then people in power continue to not see any repercussions for their actions. So I feel like it's
I think
you have to be engaged with the world, I suppose.
Personally, I think technology is worsening that, because it's becoming a bigger and bigger pacifier for our boredom, for our anxieties, for everything. Meaning that we're not critically thinking anymore.
Yeah.
When do you have the time to do that? If you're driving, you're listening to something. When you're home, you're listening to something, or you're watching something.
Yeah.
And like, just to go full circle with Christianity again, I feel like it provides a bulwark, a beacon to know, like, to center around, and to like, in all these wavy waters of troubles and decisions and stupid things happening in the world. It provides a centeredness that I guess the alternative doesn't. So I don't know. Just a thought.
I feel like I have some thoughts on that, but before I say those, yeah, like with the technology exacerbating the problem, it's not just voting like politically too. I feel like it's important to like be mindful of how you spend your time and your money voting with your wallet, what companies you give your money to, and what.
But we're back to politicizing now. Everything. Like now you're politicizing money, how I spend my money.
What do you mean? Like the if you want the world to exist in a certain way, or like if you don't
I see.
if you don't want things to spiral out of control and have people that are in power continue to abuse their power, then you can't give those people money. For instance, if you don't want like Mark Zuckerberg to influence people's attention and subtly control their lives through the ads they're seeing and the people that they're connected to on Facebook, that's not actually a random algorithm or anything like that designed to farm outrage, you have to stop going on Facebook. You have to not use that technology. Like if you are upset that some company is doing horrible things, stop paying them money. Like you don't have to. I don't know. I feel like there is a balance between politicizing everything. You don't have to make it a question of politics. You could make it a question of your individual beliefs about what you think the world is better off as, one where everybody is constantly absorbed by their cell phones or not. And if you feel strongly about that, you could get rid of your cell phone and get a flip phone or no phone. And that idea to me is becoming more and more
unrealistic because everything's on the phone now. I think it's just a matter of regulating and putting yourself in a mindset of, I'm not going to be a slave to Instagram today.
Sure.
I'm going to be a slave to something else.
Yeah. You don't have to only get rid of your phone. That's just an extreme option, I suppose.
Yeah.
You could also, set up your phone so that you're only allowed to go on Instagram for 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Or delete your Instagram app, stop using it entirely, whatever along those tracks it may be.
I feel like a lot of the world's problems could be solved if we get people critically thinking again.
Yeah, I don't know about the again though. When were we critically thinking?
I don't know, man. Our establishments are pretty nice, like government wise and society wise. Like you and I can sit here on a random Wednesday afternoon and have the world run completely without us being involved right now. I think that's commendable, don't you think?
Yeah. But
that required a lot of critical thinking.
And we're still doing that though. Like
I feel like for example, less men are going into college nowadays. Where are these scientists going to come from? Are they all going to be women? Sure, but what are the odds of that in terms of like just choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like we're critically thinking less when we used to do more. I don't know. Like, would you disagree that the greatest generation was the greatest generation?
Yeah, why are they considered the greatest generation? I'm not sure.
Because they fought evil and won, being the Nazi regime.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I think that's commendable. Like, they didn't know they were going to win. They left it all out on the line, and they did it, at the cost of millions of lives. Do you think the world has seen a greater evil? And we won,
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, you have Mao Zedong, obviously.
I just don't know, like,
Still won.
Fighting in war, like, I guess it was probably a better war to be fighting in than most.
Yeah.
But
are you suggesting that maybe we shouldn't have fought, or what?
I just don't know if that makes them, like, if that makes them the greatest generation. Like,
okay.
Is that what it takes just to fight in a war against
the greatest evil that the world has ever seen? Yeah, I think so. And win. I mean, Neville Chamberlain. I mean, I was just at the Holocaust Museum in DC, so it's a little fresh, but like,
yeah,
just to see the rise of Nazism and how the West was so slow to respond was shocking to me.
I mean, I
don't know.
I feel like there's several generations though that have done perhaps more great things in terms of like achievements. Like,
okay,
yeah, sure, it does take like courage and like conviction to enlist in a war, but like you've got the generation of people that built a country. You got the generation of people in like the late 1800s who built the entire American infrastructure of like electricity lines and railroads across the entire country.
That is insane to do.
Like,
agreed.
I don't know which of those requires more effort.
I think fighting evil requires more effort because it's not just a physical fight; it's an ideological fight. To where the things you're describing are a technical achievements, which aren't to be, poo-pooed on or what have you. But I think fighting an idea is much more difficult to do, and not to mention, it didn't take the Allies a year to win. It didn't take them 2 years. It took multiple years to win this war. Touching on ideologies and having that anchor really did kind of help the boys bring it home. Bring home that W. I don't know. Just a thought. And I feel like we need more people like thinking about community, which is another topic, but we don't have time. Just thinking about community versus the self. It would help so much.
Yeah. We had some other topics, but we could probably get to those at a later date if we return to this. But
sounds good.
One thing that I was just thinking of real quick about the greatest generation is, they go off and fight evil, but then when they come home, I'm not so big on the 1950s and late 40s of what happened. There's the baby boom, obviously because of them, and huge expansions of everything like agriculture and industrialization and suburbs. And I think a lot of that had negative results, like drastically negative results, like basically in terms of not being sustainable at all and destroying the natural world to a large degree by expansion of suburbs and just polluting everything like crazy, and then developing all these pesticides that just spread across the entire world and just killing everything. Like a lot of not really any thought going into these technological developments. I don't know,
and that's not even touching upon
save the world, come home, destroy the
American
world
struggle, specifically during that time.
Sure,
that's not
that
even
too.
Touching upon that, right? Because those boys came home and
then we're
we
just
don't want
forgotten
you,
about. Thanks, okay, goodbye.
So that's another topic, but I definitely agree how it's just a duality of being human, man. It's like you fight the evils that you can, or you try to, but nobody's going to be perfect, and you just try to fight every day.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been talking for a while. We could talk about a lot more. Thanks for coming on this podcast episode.
Thanks for having me.
Before we end, what I usually like to do is ask my guests for a recommendation of a thing that the audience member could go do. Usually it's like if you've read any books, but you said you're not a big reader. So if there's any specific activity, could be a movie you've seen, a place to go, a thing to do, what one thing would you recommend somebody who's listening does? I'll say one relevant to what you did, what you've been doing. If you have the ability to, I highly encourage you to travel while you're young and not save it until retirement or later in life.
Agreed.
It'll have a much bigger impact on you the earlier you do it, and it'll influence the rest of your life going forward.
Agreed. I would also say just take bigger risks while you're younger, and don't be afraid to take risks. I had a really cushy job in government when I went out on my own. And that was one of the things that caused my ex-girlfriend and I to break up, to where I wanted to leave that comfort to kind of go on my own. And I didn't have that support. And so I kind of had to let go of that. But the point is, just don't be afraid to risk it. Venture out on your own. But in terms of experience, I would say get out on a boat. I don't know. Yeah. Specifically sailing. I don't know. I find it much more enjoyable to kind of just let the waves take you. Like I was talking to you with the girls, you just kind of let the waves take you, and then you can direct, not but just kind of let the water do with you what it will.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh man.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.